Just a quick note before we start the show. Thank you to everyone who has provided feedback about the intro, about the music and all that stuff. There will be changes. There will be tweaks. But right now, with the way it's the holidays, people are around. So not a whole lot of work, going into fixing that stuff. But, in the next few weeks into January, we'll try to nail it down. But for now, you kind of got to deal with the intro the way it is. I hope it's okay. Anyway, here's the show. You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure for me.
Fonte with a scooping header, it's 2-0!
I would like to make the most of with this opportunity.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0! Blue mouse shot! Oh my word!
He ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to a very unmerry edition of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. No matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you are surrounded with the people that make you happy and that you love, because that is really what this time of year is about. And I should tell you that Christmas is actually my least favorite holiday of all the holidays. At the time of recording, it is early-ish on Christmas Eve. My children are starting to wake up. They are watching TV in their Christmas-themed pajamas. The lights are on. The cinnamon rolls are in the oven. It is really a great time. But I don't like all the commercial stuff that surrounds Christmas, but that's okay. We won't talk about that here. On this episode, I am joined by Jack from Saints News and Views. You probably follow along, but if you don't, it's at Saints FC Views on Twitter. You should be sure to follow along, and I'll let Jack explain exactly what that is when I speak to him. But you may notice this is a day early. This is actually on a Monday. Usually the show comes out on Tuesday, but because we play Tottenham on Boxing Day, wanted to make sure you have it. I really hope you're not listening to this on Christmas Day, but if you are, Merry Christmas. I will also be listening to podcasts on Christmas Day because that is just what I do. But Jack and I are going to talk about all kinds of things. We talked immediately after the Huddersfield match on Saturday, so it is not necessarily the happiest thing that ever has happened. But hopefully we don't kill all of your Christmas joy. But if we do, you'll know how my kids feel. So here's my conversation with Jack from Saints News and Views. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Jack from Saints News and Views. You can find him on Twitter at Saints FC Views. And we are here to talk about everything going on with the team and with the holiday coming up. You're going away on holiday and so am I. And this is kind of the last thing we're going to do before that. So I think that's something to look forward to, but hopefully, we'll have something positive to say, but I don't imagine so after watching what we just watched.
You know what? This is a message before anyone watches or listens to the podcast. It's probably not going to be a positive podcast. Okay. Look, it wasn't great, but we're going to reflect on a few things and let's try and look at it from a level-headed.
Yeah. We'll go level-headed, but not positive.
Yeah. No positivity.
And obviously you've been on the show before and you've done lots of other stuff like that. But, just in case anybody is new and they haven't seen Saints News and Views, what would they find if they were to visit you on Twitter or check out your feed?
Sure. So what I tried to do with this page, I've set it up, like you said, I've talked about it before, but I set it up about 5-6 years ago. And it is just a platform, really. It's a forum for Saints fans to share views. It's a page for them to keep up to date of all the Saints news and opinions. So like this week, Eric Black left the club due to personal reasons. So as soon as that information comes to me, it's straight on my Twitter page. And in that way, Saints fans can hopefully keep up to date with stuff like rumours and stuff that won't normally go on the official Saints page. So it's just a forum really for Saints fans to exchange views, maybe have a little debate, and keep up to date with all the Saints news coming out of the club.
All right. And I think I said it last time, but it is one of the few that I have account notifications turned on for, which I normally am very happy about, except for when sometimes you retweet a lot of stuff. Like if you have a post that gets a lot of things, you retweet it and I'm just like, oh my God. And then I want to throw my phone, but it's okay. It's all right. It's my own choice.
Do you know what? During the games, maybe turn it off, because that's when I can get very passionate about Saints. But the fact that you have your notifications turned on, that's amazing. Thanks, Matt. And look, I think I need to take a little time out to give you a massive round of applause. Your podcast is going from strength to strength. I listen to it every week, and last week with Chris on it, I thought it was amazing. And you're getting some great guests, and this podcast really evolving. I think you deserve a lot of credit for what you're doing. And Saints fans should definitely tune into this week by week and make sure you get it on all your devices, because it's really growing, Matt.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. I'm trying. So yeah, thanks. The guests I get really do the stuff. I just set it up and hit record and then try to make us sound more intelligent once we're all said and done here. So,
but you do all the backbone, which is amazing. So salutes to you, my friend. It is a great podcast that I love to get involved with.
Oh, thank you.
Right, on to more depressing matters.
Yes. Before we get on to this week, last week, I don't know, you were pretty popular on Twitter, or unpopular, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
What happened? Why all of a sudden were people kind of either agreeing with you or jumping all over you for one reason or another?
So I think it was going into, what game was it going into? I think it was going into the Chelsea game. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't in a positive mind frame after what had happened against Leicester. Right. Quite frankly, it was an utter shambles. I don't think I've seen a worse performance from the team collectively in 3 or 4 years, possibly. So I was quite in a negative mindset. And I think when you have a Twitter account, your tweets reflect how you feel. So I was quite negative going into the game, and the team selection I didn't agree with. So I tweeted a few things. And the problem is when you run a Twitter page, a lot of the stuff that you say, people disagree with a lot of it. And I was getting some quite negative reviews back about the page, about how you're the most negative person on Twitter, negative Saints account. And do you know what? Sometimes you need to remember when you do run these pages, maybe don't let personal opinions get in your way. Maybe try and keep it a bit more objective. And I'm definitely guilty of that. I wear my heart on my sleeve as a Saints fan, hugely. But that's the problem. When you love a football club so much and you follow them week in, week out, all your life, sometimes passion gets the better of you, and that passion can sometimes be channeled through negative tweets about the club. I don't think there's one Saints fan out there who hasn't never been negative about Saints. Sometimes, even if you love something, you're negative about it.
Sure.
So it was just a little bit of negative feedback, which is great. I love getting feedback, and sometimes it does make you think a little bit like, right, okay, keep it a bit more objective.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's done with. And it was a nice, gentle reminder to sort of think, right, maybe keep your too much personal stuff back and just keep it a bit more objective. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird thing when you have your personal page and then the like an account, like the podcast account or Saints News and Views. It's where's the line? And I think sometimes I'm too afraid to push the boundary with what I tweet. Mm. And then but it's like when I do it, it's usually just way over the line. And then it's like, oh, that's going to have to get deleted before anybody sees it. But, we'll learn and we'll move on. But,
Exactly.
So going into today, let's start with the team selection. When that came out, when you saw that it was Stevens, Yoshida, Hoyt, and Targett across that back line, how did you feel about that?
Well, even before 2:00, when the team lineup gets tweeted out by the Saints account, I was quite nervous about this team with Bertrand out and with Cedric out. They're so influential in the way we play. So I was quite worried about where Pellegrino would replace and who he'd replace with. But obviously with Stevens coming in at right back and left back with Matt Targett, it didn't fill me with confidence. I'll be totally honest with you. And seeing Stephen Davis in that holding position alongside Lamina, I wasn't confident going into this game. Stephen Davis isn't a defensive midfielder. And for me, McQueen starts ahead of Targett. And Jack Stevens, whilst he likes to push forward with the ball, he's obviously not built like a natural right back, is he? He's 6 foot, God knows what. So I wasn't too optimistic looking at that side, but I did have a big sense of optimism going into the game. Apart from the team lineup, I thought, do you know what? I feel like the rub of the green's gone against us so much this season. We deserve a little bit of luck. I'm confident. I think that we can get 3 points against Huddersfield. But little did I know that was not going to happen.
No. And yeah, it's getting so hard to predict what the lineup's going to be or what we think should happen. And, you have to assume the manager has some sort of, he's got a plan in mind, hopefully for the games coming forward. But I would have thought we would have gone for it a little bit here and then been able to put out, 5 defenders. Sure. And and a 3-man midfield of Lamino, Højbjerg, and Romeu going forward, against Tottenham on Tuesday. But, it just didn't work. I had Target in my lineup, over McQueen, just because I thought maybe we would need a little bit more help defensively, but I definitely didn't see Stevens coming in to play right back. I didn't think that was going to be, because that doesn't, for me, it doesn't offer enough going forward, on that side.
It doesn't. Especially when you play, we play a 4-2-3-1.
Yes.
You need wide players at the back who have got pace, who have got the confidence to bomb forward and overlap into midfield. And they aren't naturally players who are going to do that. Credit to Target. I thought he had quite a solid game today. Puts in a great cross with his left foot. But I saw on Twitter before the game started, has Pellegrino just put all the players into a hat and plucked them out? And that made me laugh, because his teams, like you said, his teams are so unpredictable. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if he knows his strongest lineup. And 20 games into the season, that screams doubt, and that's worrying to me as a Saints fan.
Right.
I don't know if you picked that up, but I don't think he knows his strongest side. And even the players who were started in there today, Nathan Redmond's had 14 starts, and he's failed to score in the first half of the whole Premier League season, and yet he gets a game. Dusan Tadic, for me, he's so unbelievably frustrating to watch. He's not the Tadic that we know and love. His confidence is deep cemented underground, and he doesn't warrant a start. Him and Redmond, fair play to him. Second half, he picked himself up and he was a little bit more influential. But these attacking players and the players that are playing for Southampton at the moment, they're not playing well. And regardless of what system Pellegrino plays, I think the players have a big responsibility towards our downfall this season. I think they need to take a long, hard look at themselves and really reflect and think, have I justified a place to start? And out of the starting 11 today, I could maybe pick 3 players who justified to start in week in, week out. And one of them is Fraser Forster, who's turned his team around and made some great saves for us recently. Mm-hmm. One of them is Charlie Austin, who limped off today with a hamstring injury. He's been on fire. And the only other player I think questionably warrants a start in that team lineup is Ryan Bertrand, if he's fit. Apart from that, there's not many players in there that warrant a start. Right. And these players, I think, need to have a long, hard look at themselves. But whilst I've got my opinions on the manager, for me, what can a manager do when you're making so many basic defensive mistakes week in, week out? Like Yoshida and Stevens today, how did their striker get in between them? Charlie Austin, he's on fire, but how can he not finish a simple chance right in front of goal to make the game 2-0, and that's 3 points in the bag?
Right.
I feel a little bit sorry for Pellegrino. Whilst I have my doubts on him, these players need to have a long, hard look at themselves and think, have I performed to the best of my ability this season? And I don't think any of them can hold their heads up and say they have.
Yeah, and it, like you said, we definitely have some issues with the manager, and I've been in the give him more time camp for a long time, but it's been long enough at this point. Like you said, we just don't see the improvement in the players. You don't have players anywhere in this team that look like they've improved drastically from last year, or have really come out of their shell. And we did see that a little bit last year under Puel, where at least there were some players who were getting a lot better and getting chances, and we just don't seem to be defensively solid this season. We don't really offer anything going forward. But like you said, some of that's on the players too. Like if Austin puts that chance away after Redmond does all that work when we've been on him for a long time to do something, and he finally does it, and then Austin puts it wide instead of just killing the game off at 2-0. And then, chance eventually here we come, and Huddersfield are able to tie it. And, we have taken now 20 points from our last 20 matches at home.
That's 4 wins all season, Matt.
Yeah.
4 wins, and let that sink into you. That's dreadful. You can't look at it any other way but being dreadful. But for me, whilst I've said I have my doubts on Pellegrino, I always try and look beyond that matter. And the fact that we might have to sack our second manager, and we might have 2 managers sacked within 6 months, what does that show what's happening off the field?
Right. It definitely points to some issues that go beyond even the manager, or the players. And it's things that are going on. It goes beyond the
players. And it goes beyond the players, and it goes beyond the managers. The fact that we might have 2 managers in 6 months. It shows there's disarray to the scenes. Les Reed, I don't know. For me, the last 3 or 4 windows haven't been strong enough. And whilst Lamina and Hoot was a good addition to our team, there have been so many obvious points in this team that need additions or need strengthening. We couldn't score last year. So why did we think by bringing in a new man and no more new strikers, that's going to improve our opportunities in front of goal? That's not how football works. I know, admittedly, if you've got a good coach who can help your strikers play football, it's going to help a lot.
Right.
But Pellegrino was always a defensive manager. Look at his record at Alvarez and the way that he would line his team up. That's what's killing us. The things off the pitch are really worrying me at the moment, Matt. They really are worrying me.
Yeah, and I think that those signs were there, even before that. We all were kind of crying for it and hoping that we were going to get somebody in to strengthen the offense of the squad. And it didn't happen. And, I don't know. I've always been, or I try to force myself to be, I should say, optimistic as to what's going on and hope that we are actually going to be able to push forward and that the board has done their due diligence and that they're bringing in the right guy. And I'm not convinced at this point. It's disheartening a little bit to watch the team do what they did today, and do it all season. It's almost like we're running out of things to say about how we're playing because it's just the same thing every single week.
The problem is as well, the club love to put a real sense of we march on and all this due diligence we do with the black box, and we like to think of ourselves as a forward thinking club. But is that really what's going on at Southampton? I don't think so. I think our turnover in manager, our turnover of players in such a short space of time, that doesn't bode well. In the last 4 years, we've sold all our best players. Our best managers have left us, and our recruitment hasn't been up to scratch. And our search for new young managers, or say new managers from abroad, haven't worked. Puel didn't work. Pellegrino's clearly not working. So where does that lie? That lies with Les Reed. That lies with Ross Wilson. Those two, I don't know. I don't know how football clubs work. Whose decision is it for them, for their job security? Who looks at Ross Wilson and Les Reed and say, are you two doing a good job? Because I don't think so. Is that the owner? Is it the chairman? I don't know personally, but personally, Les Reed and Ross Wilson are in a bit of trouble at the moment. Their work off the field hasn't been good enough. And that means that's had a direct correlation effect on what's going on the field. If you don't have a manager Pellegrino doesn't look like a motivator. He doesn't look like a man manager. I don't think that he's going to inspire the players to turn this run of form round. The last couple of games, loss, draw, loss, draw. I don't say that I have faith in Pellegrino to turn it around. He doesn't come across to me as someone who's going to go in that changing room after today and really leave an impact on them that they're not doing a good enough game and they're not playing well. I don't know. I'm struggling to even comprehend, and I probably made sense the last couple of 5 minutes because I'm lost for words about what's going wrong at the Saints, and I think it's a real deep-rooted problem. I think that it's beyond Pellegrino. I think you need to take a long, hard look at yourself. They've not performed well. Ross Wilson, you haven't been good enough. Your job off the field hasn't been good enough. It's simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's really, really easy to look at the manager and put the blame there. And the next step is to look on the field because that's what we see. We pay to go see, or I get up to watch. I don't get up to watch Les Reed work. I get up to watch the team perform on the field. And when that doesn't happen, it frustrates me. But that is, like you said, it's not the root of the problem. I think the problems lie elsewhere. And not that all the players are playing well and doing maybe an adequate job on their behalf, but sometimes I'm not sure that it's just the players on the field that are the issue, or it's just the manager. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and a lot of those things are going on behind the scenes. And, they brought in, people down to Staplewood and try to, show them what's going on and try to kind of build this, keep this thing built up the way they have it in the past. But I think the truth is maybe we were ahead in that kind of scouting, idea or the way we were going about it, but everybody else is caught up, and a lot of people have caught up and passed us. And if we don't figure out what's going on, I think we're going to see more of what we're seeing now, where we're just not quite good enough to do it. And Chris and I last week were talking about, if you look at some of the teams that are slightly above us or even below us, we wouldn't necessarily trade squads on paper with any of those teams. But no. I think that if you asked some of those other, people who watch those teams week in and week out, they would say the same thing, because maybe we don't have a ton of household names. We have Van Dijk. We have, Charlie Austin. People might say, oh, we'll take him, or Fraser Forster plays for the England team. Like, oh, maybe. But really, we have a lot of guys who most people haven't heard of. And I think that's going to be more and more of a commonality as you look across the teams that are where we are in the table. And I think that's maybe just a change in how things are going in terms of scouting in the Premier League. And I think we're starting to fall behind a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense or not. For
me, when a team, I'm watching individuals play. I'm not watching a team play. I'm watching a bunch of individuals play. There's no lost that togetherness that we had 2 or 3 years ago. That's completely gone. I feel like that there's a massive separation between where we were 2 or 3 years ago to where we are now. We've lost a lot of things. We lost our best strikers. We've lost people off the field. Mitchell, who went to Tottenham, huge loss for us. And there's little fragmented bits at Southampton that don't bode well going forward. And I think it may be a little bit of a worrying time for Saints. There's little parts that really concern me about what's going on at the club, starting from recruitment all the way through to management with the team. And I think it's a worrying time. We seriously need to, I don't know. I think there's worrying times ahead, and I'll be brutally honest with you, Matt. Brace yourself, because I think we're in for a relegation fight in 2018. I think 2018 is going to be a year where Saints are fighting for their place in the Premier League. And I hope to God I'm wrong. I hope that I can look back on this come the end of the season and be totally wrong. But I think we're in a relegation scrap.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to think that where we were when I started watching the team under Pochettino and then under Koeman, and that we're here just now, like that soon. And it's
funny how football can turn 180 degrees. Saints used to be so exciting to watch. We were talking about Champions League and Europa League. And now within a couple of years, we're talking about relegation. Mm-hmm. Where do you think it's gone wrong from your perspective?
Well, like you pointed out, I definitely think it's behind the scenes. It is the recruitment. It is the fact that I think everybody else is caught up to where we were. Maybe it's a symptom, the managers we hired, the last 2 managers, maybe that's a symptom of not wanting to deal with the personality like Koeman, again. And I know that people have put that idea out there that I don't want to say he's a yes man, but Pellegrino definitely is not challenging, anyone. I think he would be one to back down from almost any kind of verbal altercation. That's just based off what I've seen in press conferences. And, when you hear him talk, and he doesn't, like you said, he just doesn't look like that kind of dominant, personality. And that's fine, but then you have to have something else that gets people motivated or gets your point across to whoever it is that you are talking to. And it's quite clear that I don't think he's in charge of who's coming in and out of the transfer window. He doesn't seem like he has control of the Van Dijk situation. And that stuff is worrying, because that means maybe he's not getting the support from above that he needs. The backroom stuff just isn't getting done like it should be.
No, he doesn't have control over Van Dijk. That situation's gone on for far too long now. Far too long. And I know Saints have a history, if you look at Morgan Schneiderlin, of holding players who don't want to go away. We've sold a lot of players, and ever since Morgan Schneiderlin, when a player wants away, we've held on to them for a season or one more window, purely out of I don't know what the word.
It's almost out of spite,
Out of spite, yeah. The fact that, do you know what? We're going to be bullied over. We're going to put the PR thing up. We're not going to be walked over by the big teams. But being the same player he was last year, his head is well beyond Saints. He is well out of Saints. He has no future, no commitment towards Saints. He is either in Manchester City or Liverpool. And from what I'm hearing, think he won't be here for much longer. You give it a couple of weeks, I think he'll be gone. But it's like I'm saying, Pellegrino doesn't have control over that. You only have to look at today, and his excuse was, we're just going to arrest him. A centre-back of Virgil van Dijk's quality doesn't need to be rested. The ultimate professional, if he's going to be the world-class player everyone's tipped him to be,
right,
he doesn't need to be rested. He can get a goal once. That's what centre-back should. So he's obviously not in control of that situation, which is worrying, because if he's not in control of one player, you think about, is he in control of the rest of the squad? If he can't control one player and the club can't control one player, it's a bit worrying.
Yeah. And sometimes when I think about it, you think about, if players see the way that we've treated Van Dijk, and I'm not absolving Van Dijk of any blame here, but players look at how players like, or how we've treated players like Schneiderlin, like Mane, like Wanyama, like Van Dijk. Is that going to stop players of that quality wanting to come to the club? If they know that they are essentially bigger than us, but they just need to be put in the shop window, and all of a sudden they realize that if they just can't pass through us like they used to be able to, does that stop them from coming in the first place? And what do we want? Do we want players to come in that are that good that we know are passing through? Is that okay with us? Or would we rather not even touch those guys and bring in players that maybe we don't know, that they maybe don't have the quality?
It's hard, isn't it? I think for the last couple of years, I would have said to you, I'm more than happy for these young players of Wanyama, Mane's class and potential to come in, stay with us for a couple of years and then go on. Because we're never going to compete with the big teams. And to have them at our club 2 or 3 years is going to give us a huge chance to push forwards. But now, in the position where we are, going down the table, we need who are going to roll their sleeve up and play for the badge on the front and not think about the name on the back.
Mm-hmm. We
need players Saints and want to fight for Saints, because we're in a relegation battle now and we don't need those sort of our team.
Right. We need players who are, like you said, who are going to fight for the team, who are going to be willing to put in the work and fight, some of those battles where we're not trying to win a 3-2 game against Manchester City at this point. We're trying to grind out a 1-0 win against Huddersfield or against Brighton or against Newcastle, because those are the points that we need to be able to stay in this league. Otherwise, the championship looks a lot different, just in terms of what I've seen. They've put some games on ESPN here in the States, recently, and that game just looks different. It's not quite the same. There's something different about it. It looks a little bit more rough and tumble. It looks a little bit, more open. It looks like we don't have some of the players to be able to do that, so I definitely think we need to be able to.
The likes of Buffel wouldn't stand a chance in the championship. That's not the sort of player you want in the championship. When you watch championship games, the championship for me is one of the best leagues in the world, but it's incredibly physical. So you need different sort of players to what you need in the Premier League. But the talk of champions makes me feel weird. The fact that a couple of years ago we were looking up Champions League and Les Reed was coming out with all these contingency plans for when we're possibly competing for the Champions in the Europa League. To think now we're looking completely the other way. We're staring right down the barrel of the gun at relegation.
Right.
It's a funny old world football, how quickly things can be turned on their head.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's try to talk a little bit about today, and then we'll answer some questions, because there are lots of questions coming in. And I think that a lot of the things that we are talking about show up in today's match, whether it's from the initial team selection shows that he doesn't quite have control of the VVD situation. Like you said, Van Dijk probably doesn't need to be rested. I think he was rested last week. We didn't have a game midweek. He's fine. Maybe you rest him against Tottenham because that's probably not a game we're going to get a whole lot of points from anyway. But no. And I don't want to think that way, but really, like, we needed this win, that to be honest.
Today was a must win. Coming into the game, I tweeted, is it a must win today? And there was every single person who responded a yes. All over my Twitter page, all over the forum, all over every Saints media platform. Everyone was saying today was a must win. Mm-hmm. And we must win today. And it's worrying.
And to know that it's a must win, that the fact that everybody knows it.
Yeah. And I think Huddersfield is a must win game. A championship promoted team this season is a must win game halfway through the season with only 4 victories. That screams relegation.
I made a point of saying this last week that Huddersfield's squad is worth £50 million. If they were to sell all of their players, that's about the expected value they would get according to Transfer Market, or Transfer Market, however you say it. Ours is 220 million. And so to take, this shouldn't be a match. This should be us beating them, to be honest. And I know that doesn't speak, it's not always how it works, but coming into it, yeah, it's a must win. But the fact that everybody knows that, and at the start of the match, it didn't really look like our players knew that. Those first kind of 10 minutes were not great, from us. The Huddersfield seemed to be on the front foot. And granted, we turned it around. But there were some moments of worry at the beginning when Yoshida is swinging and missing at balls in the box, trying to clear it, and Forster's finally getting there and falling on top of it and stuff like that. You got Tadic falling over every time he gets touched. Speaking of a player who probably can't cut it in the championship. And Huddersfield had time in the box and on the wing to take the ball from us, get the ball into the box, and guys were getting shots off. And really that is not acceptable if we're going to be the team that we want to be and move up the table at all. And then even just a few minutes after that, they hit the crossbar. It looked like Forster got a touch to that to make a necessary and great save. But we needed to do a better job of closing people down, both on the wing and close down crosses, and also mark people better in the box. And that comes back to bite us later, but it's something that we've seen before. And it's like, we should be, if Pellegrino is the defensive manager that we think he is, and he should be because he was a center back, you should be able to at least address that, Every time you get a manager into a new club, one of the first things they're able to do is solidify the defense. That's like job number one. And we haven't done that.
Yeah, you build from the back.
Oh my God, I'm so frustrated.
The thing is, Matt, it's just every single game I've watched this season, there's been so many elements from the games throughout the season preparing. There's so many things where we can't make basic 10-yard passes, or we not tight enough to our players, or we can't convert the most simplest of chances. You see them knock in for fun. The worrying thing is, I've not seen enough from Pellegrino and the aid. Don't worry, we're working on it on the training ground, because they're not showing that in the game. I'd love to know what they're working on in the training ground, because I've not seen any glimpse of it the last couple of games, the last 5 or 6 games. I've not seen a glimpse of what they've worked on in the training ground. We waste chance, numerous occasions. And for instance, today when Huddersfield scored, the biggest player on the pitch couldn't communicate to say who was picking him up. It's the most basic thing as a defender to talk, and couldn't do it. And the moment we conceded, we looked like we were going to crumble, where we looked all over the place. That 5 minutes after we conceded, we were so weak, we didn't know whether or not to go forward with it. We weren't pressing people down. They had so much time and space on the ball. And that's worrying. We lose any sort of hope or any sort of strength that we built up in the game when we concede. And it's worrying to see. They could have easily have put the game to bed after equalised. We just crumble. We crumble in confidence, and we crumble in organisation at the back when we concede. And that's really worrying.
There needs to be something, just character-wise with the squad. When you concede, you need somebody there that can kind of get to everyone and say, pick your heads up. We have a job to do. We know what we need to do. We can do this. And it doesn't look like anybody is out there doing that. It, like you said, no. you were watching individuals, and the guy who makes a mistake, yeah, he's going to be pissed, and his head's going to drop a little bit, but you need the guy next to you to say like, hey, we got this. We still have a match to play. We whatever it is, if you've played team sports, you know what that's like. You need somebody on the team. And whether it's Stephen Davis as the captain, whether it's Fraser Forster, who's been at the club now for several years, you need somebody to do that, but nobody looks like they're doing that. It looks like you said, we crumbled and stopped talking to one another. And it looked like you said, like Huddersfield was going to put the game away there for a while. And then we made some substitutions. Buffal came on. He looked pretty dangerous going forward, but we just couldn't do it. And one thing I wanted to point out about today was at the end of the first half, towards the end of the second half, we gave away needless and silly free kicks in dangerous areas.
Yeah.
Buffal fouled, gave away a free kick about 35 yards out in the 88th minute. We did it on the right-hand side of the pitch again at the end of the first half. And that's the kind of stuff that, we can't do that. We are not good enough to be able to do that and know that we're going to be able to defend and get the ball away.
But yet again, Mike, that comes back to basic mistakes. Today, a basic mistake between Stevens and Yoshida. Against Bournemouth, a basic mistake by Wesley Hoot, who's trying to do a Cruyff turn in his own box and is dispossessed. So many basic mistakes from Fraser Forster this year have cost us. These mistakes that when you're playing in the Premier League cost you. We could be looking at this and talking about Saints in a completely different way this year if 6 were done differently. Right. If we had shored up our defence, we were conceding as many goals and crumbling as easy as we are. If we learned how to put the ball in the net and become clinical, we would not be talking about this. It's simple little things that I think a good manager can change cost us. Yeah. And do you know what? Whilst we are making these little mistakes, I think an element of luck comes into it as well. We have not had any luck this year.
Right.
The rub of the green, for me, it's not a massive thing in football. You have to, obviously, it's all about your performance. It's about the side you have. But sometimes a little bit of luck helps. And we've not had it this year. Look at Yoshida. He's absolutely leapt above anyone else in that box. And he's seen his header go onto the post, hit the goalkeeper, and 9 times out of 10, that ball then goes into the net.
Yep.
But for us, it goes out. And that little bit of luck we've not had. And I'm not saying luck plays a massive part in football. It shows you that we're in dire straits when little things like that happen. We don't have the luck. We don't have any momentum, and basic mistakes are costing us. And I'll refer back to it again. It's a relegation fight.
Yeah. You're right. And
Matt, if I said to you at the start of the season, right, being the team we are, having the strength we thought Southampton had, how many points do you think we would have picked up against Huddersfield, Swansea, Watford, Newcastle, Burnley, and Leicester at home?
Was it 6?
At the start of the season.
6 matches? You would, at the very least, 12. At the very least. Right?
Picked up 3 points at home against Huddersfield, Swansea, Watford, Newcastle, Burnley, and Leicester. How worrying is that? Teams that categorically on paper not as good as us picked up 3 points against those teams who aren't as good as us. That's really worrying for me.
Yeah.
If we can't beat teams below us, then that is not a good where you are a team. Sometimes you don't expect to take points against the big teams, the Chelseas, the Man Cities, but you're expected to pick up points throughout the season against teams who are below you and teams who are around your position. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we've only taken 3 points against the likes of Swansea and Watford, that's really worrying.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but
no, you're not.
When you see statistics like that, and when you're not beating teams like that, how can you be positive about Saints? It shows you the position we're in when we can't pick up points against those teams. 4 wins all season. There's something going wrong, and we've got to turn it around quick. And we've got a great chance to turn it around, Matt. The January transfer window is around the corner. It's coming up. And if Les Reed and Ross Wilson have done their job, is that they could bring in, we'll have a first team coach lined up, ready to bring in. And it's little things like that. Even though we're going to have to pay over the odds for it. Well, Les Reed, you put us in the position where we'll have to pay over the odds. If we don't bring in at least 2 or 3 players to turn the season around, then we don't stand a chance. We don't stand a chance. We're knees deep in that relegation battle. We need a couple of players. I think, for me, someone to replace Tadic, a creative midfielder who's going to drop deep, who's got a great passing range on them, who's got the ability to dribble and beat players. We need a winger, someone to give competition to Redmond or even replace Redmond, who will run directly at players and towards the goal. We need a striker. We need a striker who I think we've been grateful, but he's injured. He's got a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
And all too often. How long is he going to be out for? Do we need to replace him?
Yeah.
We have a massive chance in January to turn this season around. And if we have to play over the odds, that's nothing to what we'll lose financially getting relegated to the Championship.
And, there's a high likelihood we'll have some money to spend based on Van Dijk probably not remaining a Saint after today or after the window.
60 million, Matt, will probably get for him. 50 million, 60 million. That is so much money for a team like Southampton. For a team that a record signing is under 20 million, you think the players that we can bring in. But the problem is people know with the money that we've got for about to pay over the odds. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But potentially, this Chinese has paid 200 million, 80% of a club who are championship bound.
Yeah.
And if he's a businessman, if he's a good businessman, he knows short term he's going to have to plow some money in and invest in this team to get any sort of reward in the long term future. So I pray and hope that we invest in January and we add a couple of players to turn this team around. But do you have confidence in Pellegrino to spend 60 million on players?
No. I was thinking about this a little bit during the match, and when you look at where some of those players came from before, they were coming from kind of unknown. The Dutch league's not unknown, but it's definitely not one of the, kind of the big five leagues. And so Koeman had some connections there, or whether we had scouts there or whatever it is, we were able to kind of pluck the gems out of there. And that money that we were able to spend on there, even though it wasn't a record signings for us, that money going into a team in that league meant that was a ton of money for them, and they were willing to part with those players. And I think even if kind of the players that we're looking at, it seems like we're linked with some people in the Spanish league and in La Liga, and that money just doesn't quite go as far, I don't think. And so I think that we're going to have a tougher time getting the players that we really need. And I'm not sure that that Les Reed is going to be willing to spend the money, or that the owner is going to be willing to spend the cash. So it's I don't know. It's worrisome, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with this.
But the thing is, Matt, even if you do bring a new manager in, you've got a new personnel at the realm who doesn't know the team that well. And I think, if anything, you're back to square one. Whilst a new manager sometimes does inject his ideas and his philosophies in, it's worrying because any manager that comes in, he's got to make an instant impact. And that's hard as a manager.
Right.
You think I think we'll bring in another foreign manager, because there's not the likes of Sam Allardyce and Alan Pardew who are bound to get you at least stay in the Premier League. They're gone. They're off the market. So any manager we bring in is going to be a foreign manager, and that manager needs to come in and be able to not only change what's going on at the back and be able to make us start scoring again, but he needs to get to know the coaches. That's a huge task. So if anything, does sacking him halfway through the season make sense? There's so many reasons for and against it.
Right.
But do you know what? Les Reed, whilst I've criticised him, he's got a hard job. He's got a very hard job. He's got hard decisions to make of him.
Right.
Very hard.
And similar, yeah. He, for sure, he's going to be criticized either way. But I think at this point, the number of people defending him and his choices and his actions over the past, say, 3 windows are dwindling. And as long as you have people being able to argue both sides in a relatively intelligent manner, then fine, the argument can be made, and maybe he's doing the right thing. But right now, I think that people are losing faith in what he's being able to do at the club. And I think that's worrisome. And I think we've answered St. J, who is at irrelevant_T_X's question, which is, why are we so poor, we'll call it. I think we've kind of dealt with that. But unless there's anything else that you'd like to point out about the game, let's move on to some questions, because we have plenty of them.
Yes, let's go to the questions. Let's answer some questions.
Okay, all right. Stephen Brandt, who is at Yellow Card SBC, he runs a podcast called the Yellow Card Podcast. He says, will VVD go to LFC? We're just going to say that and then not answer it. And Chris Hughes from Saints Marching says, assuming we struggle to get more than 2 points against Spurs and United collectively, do you think Pellegrino will still be employed come the turn of the year? What do you think? Do you think he'll still be around come January?
My honest answer is I don't know. I don't know. If Cortese was still in charge at Saints, he'd have his bags packed and Pellegrino would be long gone. But with Les Reed in chance, Saints don't necessarily have a history of sacking him. But for me, I've got a sneaky suspicion he might go. I've got the smallest little bit of me is saying that he's going to go, because St. Mary's is a toxic place. I couldn't make it today. I couldn't actually be at the ground, but from literally watching the stream, the negativity and the booing surrounding the players in the stadium, any human being will pick up on that. And Les Reed, whose job it is to pick up on that, I think I've got a feeling that he necessarily won't give Pellegrino much more time if he can't turn this around. If there's not a drastic run of form where we pick up points in the early new year, I think he could be gone by February.
There was one instance where Redmond had the ball. He ran forward, was closed down by
Yes.
like 3 people, brought the ball back, and everybody's booing, and he kind of throws his arms up in the air. He hits this garbage diagonal ball, gives the ball away straight away. And you can just see the frustration.
It's toxic, Matt. It's absolutely toxic. And Redmond, he hasn't put in the performances expected, so he's become a scapegoat. Saints fans love a scapegoat, and Nathan Redmond taking a lot of slack from Saints fans. Deserve he? Yes. He hasn't been good enough. Simple as that. He's not been the player we know he can be. But it just shows you that the fans are jumping on our own players. What does that say about the club? That your own fans are jumping on your own player because he's not running forward with the ball, that he's turned around. That's toxic. That is really toxic. And that tells you a lot about where the club is at the moment.
Mm-hmm. You kind of spoke to this before, but Christian Candler, who's at Candlerability, asks, if you were Les Reed, what would your January plan be? So you mentioned you might spend some money on a striker, an attacking midfielder. Anywhere else that you would be looking to address?
If I was Les Reed in January, I would put my hands in my pockets. I'll be going to the new Chinese owner and desperately pleading with him to add funds on top of the money that we get from Virgil van Dijk. Because the money you lose in the championship is ridiculous. This team does not deserve to be in the championship. And if we don't buy a few players in January, I think that's where we're heading. So if I was Les Reed, I'll be looking to bring in a couple of attacking players. A centre attacking midfielder for Tadic, someone who's direct and quick and pacey on the left or the right or one of the wings, and a target man up front. I think there are areas that we also need to add to, but I don't think they're as important. I think long term, I'd look to bring in a replacement for Fraser Forster, and I would also like another midfielder. But at this moment, our issue is going forward. We need a couple of attacking players, Matt, or we're going to continue to not score and not put chances away, and ultimately not be able to beat teams.
Yeah. And it looked like at the press conference after, I'm seeing some things online that Austin's going to be out at least 3 weeks. So, I mean, there's a lot of games between now and when he comes back that we're going to need to find some goals. And our only 2 strikers then, on the first team, are Long and Gabbiadini, neither of whom have scored, recently.
No, it's that when Charlie Austin limped off today, I was gutted.
Yeah.
He genuinely looks like, and I love what Charlie Austin is, his confidence. He goes into every single game thinking he can score. And I love that about a player. I absolutely love that about a player. You look at Gabbiadini, you look at Shane Long. How confident are you that they're going to score? I'm not.
No.
Shane Long is not a natural born goal scorer. He's got so many great attributes that make him a good striker, but he's not a goal scorer.
Right.
Gabbiadini can score goals. He's proved that to us. When he came in from Italy, the first month or so, he's scored for fun. But he's in a spot now where he needs to dig deep and show some sort of depth to his game where he's been on a bad run, but he can turn it around. But when I look at him, I don't see the confidence that he can do that. He doesn't have the hunger. He doesn't have the intensity or the aggression that Charlie Austin plays with. And I can't see them scoring many goals the rest of the season if Charlie Austin's not up front for us.
Right.
But It begs the question, Matt, why has Charlie Austin not started from day one? What was it that Pellegrino didn't like that he didn't get a run of games for the first 10 or so games?
Right.
What was it? And I'm so confused. I don't know what you think it is.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was just, I don't know. I think that's a good question. I tend to doubt Charlie Austin's fitness from time to time. And I kind of assume always that if he's not starting, it's because of that. That's the reason. But he, up until now, and the hamstring goes today, and whatever caused that, he looks like he was in shape. He's a big dude, but he's running about the pitch. He is not just standing up there waiting for the ball to be delivered to him. He's dropping deep and getting involved and chasing people back. I think he's doing all the things to show that he is fit up until the injury.
Do you know what, as well? To his credit, he looks like he's got a yard of pace. He looks quicker this season.
Yes.
He looks like he's got that extra yard of pace, a bit more acceleration on him. So if anything, that's even better.
Right. The media team does the little teammates kind of where they ask all the players ridiculous questions about their teammates. And they asked Ryan Bertrand, who's the quickest? And you know what he said?
No, what did he say?
Charlie Austin. And the person kind of said, are you serious? And he goes, yeah. He goes like, we just did the test and he's the quickest. And I mean, if you look at some of the pace we have on that team with Redmond, Yoshida was clocked in a game last season as being like the 7th fastest person in the Premier League, like in terms of top speed in a game. Long is fast, but maybe not quick. But if Austin can do that, and you could look at some of the positions he's gotten himself into this year, it's there. He's put in the work, and he's, I guess, finally earned the starting spot. I just wish it would have happened sooner, and I wish he wouldn't have gotten injured today. Obviously, I don't want anybody to get injured, but especially him right now. We need him. So
he's our most important player. Categorically, hands down, he's our most important player, and that's the problem about Charlie Austin. He would be going on to greater ventures if it wasn't for. I hope it's only a hamstring, and I know a hamstring will keep you up for 4 or 5 games or up to a month, but he is our most important. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
First look.
All right. What else do we need to cover here?
Looking questions. Do you know what? Most of them are all Pellegrino in and out.
Right.
And I've made my position clear that I think I don't categorically want to say out now, but it's only going one way at the moment, and that is out the door. So do you just get off it now and find someone to replace him, or do you give him more time?
I would say that the points you made earlier about that are true. It is difficult to say which of those decisions is correct, because I think the only manager that knows the Premier League, that is known for keeping people up, that's available right now, I think, is Tony Pulis. And I don't think I was actually sworn never to say his name again on the podcast in association with our job, but it looks like that's it. Or you go, I don't think you can go unknown foreign manager right now.
Look at what Chelsea did when Chelsea were at a point. I don't know when it was it a couple of years ago? They were generally facing relegation.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought someone in to steady the ship, keep them up for the season, and then brought someone else in. So if for that reason we need Tony Pulis to keep us up this season, do you know what? I wouldn't be too sad about it. It's not a Southampton appointment, but the way we're going, if Tony Pulis can turn our season round by shoring up our defence, then bring him in. That's not saying I want Tony Pulis in.
Right.
But if it takes Southampton bringing in a manager who doesn't necessarily match our factors or our want and desire manager, like a young manager who's going to play this brand of football, that doesn't matter at the moment. We just need someone who's going to keep us up.
Right.
And if that's what it takes, then and so be it.
Sure.
I'm not saying I want Tony Pulis in, okay?
No, nobody wants Tony Pulis.
If it gets to a position where we need a Tony Pulis or someone to steady the ship so we don't get relegated, then it needs to happen.
38 points is what you need. Most teams don't go down with 38. I know we normally say 40, but 38 is really like the number. We're halfway there. We're halfway through the season. But if you look at, although we played 19 games, we played Huddersfield twice. We haven't played Tottenham at all.
Nope.
So that, to me, our easiest run of fixtures is over. And now,
for sure,
now we have a much tougher hill to climb to get, and looking all the way down to the end of the road. If on the last day we need a point, we got to play Manchester City. Like that's not okay. Last year we couldn't even close it out against Stoke on the last day of the season, let alone Manchester City. So it doesn't look great. Things don't look great. And I hate to be that way.
I really hope that I can listen to your podcast at the end of the season and we've managed to turn it around. There's nothing more I'd love than to go into the last 5 or 6 games and not even have to murmur the R word, the relegation word. There's nothing more I'd want. And if it means getting rid of this manager and ploughing a lot of money in, I think that's what it's going to take. I think that is what it's going to take. I think Pellegrino is going to have to go, and I think we are going to have to invest in this squad in January, which we're not used to doing. But for the sake of this club staying up, I think that's where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one point of the game that we didn't point out was when Charlie Austin, whether intentionally or unintentionally, left his foot in on the goalkeeper from Huddersfield. Did you catch that?
It didn't look good. Didn't look good. He's gonna face a ban. I think the FA will look back on that, and retrospectively, I think he could get a 3-game ban for that. He's stupidly, and I can't even blame it on momentum. He's left his studs up going in on the goalkeeper, and that goalkeeper could have easily had his eye gouged out or his nose broke.
Or got it.
He didn't need to do that.
It was all kinds of stuff.
That's not, whilst I love the aggression that Charlie Austin plays with, I think the FA are going to be likely to look at that again, because you see Tarkowski in midweek, he got a 3-game ban or whatever ban he got for what he did. And that's dangerous play by Austin. That keeper's lucky to get away with only having a little bit of blood come from his nose. It was dangerous play.
Yeah.
Dangerous play. Now, I don't like to see that. No,
I'm not a fan. And that's something that, someone who's been around as long as Charlie Austin should know better than that. You know, that's a mistake that's a Marko Arnautovic type mistake, you know, and to see Austin do that.
It's Matt, why is he, it makes you think mentally, where is he? Why has he gone into something like that?
Now
I think he could be banned for that.
Yeah, I think he will. And I'm wondering though, if the ban, will it take place after he's fit again? Or is that not how it works? Is he going to wind up being banned and unfit for the same matches, you know? But
who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Here's a question for you though. Which number is bigger? The length of the ban, the number of games that Charlie Austin will be banned, or the number of points that we'll get between now and the new year?
Oh God. Well, against United and Tottenham, I generally think it pains me to say it, but I think the length of Charlie Austin's ban will be the amount of points up, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe I've said that, but I think it's true, Matt.
Yeah, I do too. But yeah. And we have one more comment here before we wrap this up. Looks like his name is Ade Reynolds at ADEREYNOLDS. And he says, no other manager has had a summer of no major sales, 2 big signings, and plenty of time to plan. There's been so many excuses, but 4 wins versus teams in turmoil from 19 is abysmal. Selections, constant changes, failure to energize the squad, lack of team spirit, poor tactics, negative approach, tedious, cautious football. I don't know who this guy is, but he's on it. He's basically summed up, I think, everything that we're all thinking, in terms of how this club is going and how it looks when you watch it.
Matt, I don't think I need to add anything to it. I think Ade's hit the nail on the spot. He's said everything that's wrong with Saints in those 2 tweets. He's managed it perfectly. We have looked so poor as a squad. Pellegrino's selections have been, at best, so easy to challenge. Our football, we don't have any identity. We look worse at the back than what we did under Puel. We still can't score. And he's had a whole summer window to get to know the players, bring in players he wants.
Yeah. And it's just not happening.
It's not happening. And the scary thing for me is that there's no signs to say this is going to improve. Even if there was the glimpse of hope that his team look more resolute at the ball, we started scoring from more positions, then I'd be like, right, the amount of turnover had managers has been ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Let's put a bit of faith in him. But I've not seen enough to keep him at the team. I've not seen enough for Pellegrino to warrant keeping his job at Southampton. Mm-hmm. And whilst there are other issues with the team and the team not performing to their ability and issues going on off the field, I see Pellegrino turning it. I really can't.
Well, Jack, I think that is bringing us towards the end of this. And although none of this is particularly positive, I think we can all look forward to spending some time with our families and our friends, and kind of just being around them and kind of enjoying that. And I wish you all the best over the holiday and safe travels. And thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate it.
No, thank you. And I apologize to any fan listening to this. It wasn't the most positive podcast. It probably wasn't the most positive episode to tune into with the ongoings at Saints. But I think sometimes you need to put football to one side. And whilst we get so involved in football, it is a great time at the moment. It's Christmas. So I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. Yourself and all the Saints fans a very Merry Christmas. Go and scoff yourself with too many mince pies and heroes and celebrations, and spend time with the family. Enjoy time with them. And my thoughts go out to a Saints fan called Mark Taylor. You can find him on Twitter at Saint_Mark_211, who's currently fighting cancer. And when you read his tweets that he's going through, it puts a lot in perspective. So whilst there are issues at Southampton Football Club, it shows you that there is far more to life than football. So if everyone could give him some encouragement, because I know that he's not going through the best of times at the moment, that would be great. And I think this is the sort of thing where every Saints fan should come together and help. And it puts things in perspective. So everyone have a great Christmas with your family, with your friends.
This is just one more reminder that football is much more than just what happens on the pitch. There are, people that are brought together for around the club that can support each other going outside of this, and whether we agree or disagree on tactics and everything else, there are people there that need our support, and that's really what this is about. So, best of luck to Mark and well wishes over the holidays and in your fight against cancer. And like you said, it does definitely put that in perspective as to what's really going on here.
Exactly. Have a good Christmas, everyone.
You too, Jack. Thank you. And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. I'd like to thank my guest, Jack from Saints News and Views. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at SaintsFCViews. Lots and lots of good stuff going on the page. Also like to remind you that this podcast is partnered with The Saints Report. For all of your Southampton FC news and needs, please visit The Saints Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are in the show notes. Additionally, the artwork for this show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Be sure to follow the We Are Southampton page on Instagram for all your matchday news, edits, and more. Be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. The music for this week's show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games. The end of the show credits is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. The links to those are in the show notes. Be sure to check them out if you like what you hear. You can give more feedback on the music and everything else you heard on the show by visiting at SFCDELL_IVERY. That's at SFCDelivery on Twitter or Instagram, or following along on Facebook at facebook.com/SFCDelivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. We'd love to hear from you, however you do it. And if you're interested and you've been listening to the show for a while, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. It doesn't take that long and it really helps the show out. And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. We will be back next week with another episode. I will be away for the new year with my family, but I was lucky enough to speak with the FA Women's Premier League Division 1 Manager of the Month for December, Simon Parker, the manager of the Southampton Women's Football Club. We got some questions from the team that we asked him. We talked to him about his journey to becoming manager and what it's like to manage the club that is the Southampton Women's Football Club. So you don't want to miss that. There won't be any updates on Saints between now and then, simply because I will be away for most of the time. But we'll be back with normal episodes as soon as the new year starts. But it really was a joy to talk to Simon, and it's really a joy to be able to bring the show to you. That show will be 52. That will be 1 year of episodes, and it's been a great time. So thank you to everybody who listens. Thank you to everybody who's been on the show. It's been a great time, and I can't wait to continue to do this into 2018. So I hope that you have enjoyed the show. I hope that you've enjoyed the time with your family. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas, and remember that together we march on. Perfect timing. Cinnamon rolls are done.